to be educated in the West, at Le Rosé School on Lake Geneva in Switzerland. Reza Shah said, "It is hard for me to part from my beloved son, but Iran needs educated and enlightened rulers." But the beloved son was to suffer more than the father.
He was sent to a foreign country with a guardian who was intimidated by Reza Shah into making sure that this boy never got into any trouble, so that the boy was never allowed to do anything. He couldn't ride a bicycle, he wasn't allowed to go off weekends climbing in the mountains in Switzerland, and so he was basically marooned in his room. He had an utterly miserable time. He was a lonely, miserable, isolated young man.
On his return to Iran in 1936, the 17-year-old Crown Prince was ordered to marry Princess Fawzia, the sister of King Farouk of Egypt. The royal wedding took place in Tehran in March 1939. Among the guests at the celebrations were military attachés from European countries on the brink of war. Reza Shah had intended to keep Iran out of the war, confident that his army would deter any aggressor. But the British and Russians needed to run a supply route through Iran, and so, on the 25th of August 1941, they invaded from the north and south. There was virtually no resistance.
The swift action that occupied a weak country in danger of falling into the grip of Hitler.
Expecting to be dethroned, Reza Shah abdicated in favor of his son. He went into exile in South Africa, where he died in 1944. His last message to his son was, "Never be afraid of anything." With no guarantee that the Allies would approve his succession, the Crown Prince had to move quickly. On the 16th of September 1941, the plainly nervous 21-year-old arrived at the Iranian parliament and swore to reign as a constitutional monarch. Iran had a new king, and no one seemed more surprised than the new Shah himself.
He was like a child who is suddenly thrown into a stormy sea and asked to swim. So he had no time to think what was happening to him. He was carried by the events.
After the war, political life in Iran, stifled for so long under Reza Shah, returned. Nationalists vied with the Communist Tudeh Party for control of the streets, while the country's traditional power blocks, landowners, bazaar merchants, aristocrats and clergy schemed tirelessly to claw back the privileges that Reza Shah had usurped. As a constitutional monarch, the new Shah appeared to play no part in this power struggle. Behind the scenes, however, he was working hard to create a power base for himself. Hoping to mobilize the support of Iran's huge rural population, he started to give away the deeds of crowned lands to peasant farmers. These simple ceremonies expressed the Shah's ideal of kingship, a benevolent ruler giving and a grateful people receiving. In February 1949, an attempt was made on his life. 5 bullets were fired from close range. Though wounded, the Shah survived. This near-miraculous escape confirmed a conviction he had held since childhood.
One of the dominating characteristics of the Shah was his report that he was divinely protected and inspired by visions. He had very serious childhood illnesses, and he reports that he was saved from each disease by a vision which came to him at night. The Shah concluded that he was divinely protected and that he was kept on earth in order to fulfill a divine mission. That was a very important part. People didn't take it seriously. He believed it.
The Shah's brush with death concentrated minds on the succession. Despite the birth of a baby daughter in 1942, his marriage with Fawzia had not prospered. They had divorced in 1948. It was necessary to find a new wife and produce a male heir. Soraya Esfandiari, half Iranian, half Bavarian, was selected for the role.
After the divorce, the Shah was very lonely. Right away, the Shah fell in love with this fine lady. And especially after it was the time which she came to Tehran and they were engaged, she became ill. And apparently the first time His Majesty went to visit this beautiful lady, he had tears in his eyes coming down. They loved each other very much, I must say.
They were married in 1951. By the 1950s, the Shah was still ruling as a constitutional monarch, but was finding the role increasingly restrictive. He was conscious of the contrast with his father, whose body had been returned to Iran in 1950.
Throughout his life, the Shah was haunted by this vision of his father, and there were groups that had been excluded from power who would use him. He would come to tell him, "But Your Majesty, this is a monarchy. Remember your father. When your father was there, could the price of bread quadruple in a month? Never." He would go and throw two bakers in their ovens, and that would be the end of the story. This comparison was constantly there.
But even as the Shah tried to assert himself, a politician appeared who intended to further restrict his powers, Dr. Mossadegh. Jailed by Reza Shah, he now challenged his son over the issue of Iran's oil. Iranian oil had always been a British concession. In return for a percentage of the royalties, the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, in which the British government held a majority share, had exclusive rights to exploit Iran's oil. By the 1950s, nearly 10% of the world's oil came through Anglo-Iranian's refinery at Abadan. Anglo-Iranian made twice as much in profits as Iran did in royalties. Oil nationalization was the issue on which Mossadegh rose to power. Unable to resist the wave of nationalist sentiment, the Shah reluctantly appointed Mossadegh Prime Minister in 1951. A bill nationalizing the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company was immediately passed. The British responded by withdrawing from Abadan and imposing a worldwide boycott of Iranian oil.
Mossadegh tried to bring Shah, young Shah, into the camp of the nationalists, knowing his resentment to the British, and create popularity for him.
But Mossadegh wanted a figurehead, while the Shah longed to exercise real power.
So gradually, in a struggle between the nationalist movement against foreign domination